Hey guys, so we're back again with Recipe for Adventure. We're going into chapter 2. Hopefully you looked up Naples and figured out where Naples is and kind of learned some things. Alright, chapter 2. Sleep was impossible in the so-called bed. It was more like sleeping in a bag full of baseballs. Alfie's parents hadn't been able to find the pump for the air mattress, so Dad said he'd have to tough it out for the night. Noises from the kitchen also kept him awake. It was probably Zia Donatella, who loved creating new dishes inspired by her travels. Her arrival had been so chaotic, she hadn't had the time to tell them any new stories. A loud bang came from the kitchen, and since Alfie couldn't sleep anyway, he decided to get up to inspect. He ran into Amelia in the hall. "Can't sleep either?" he whispered. "Nah," she said. They heard another clang in the kitchen. "Guess Zia can't either," Alfie said. Amelia nodded. "Let's go see what she's up to." They headed down the darkened hall together. When they entered the kitchen, Alfie smiled at the scene created by Zia Donatella. Every light was on, and the contents of the cabinets were scattered across the countertops. Bags of flour and sugar, spices, bowls, spoons, and more. In the middle of all of it was Zia Donatella, dressed in a long flowing gown, black and red with bits of gold. Alfie couldn't tell if it was a dress or a nightgown. But what did it matter? It had a huge dragon snaking around from the back to the front, which made the greatest whatever it was he'd ever seen. "Zia!" Alfie said in a loud whisper. He didn't want his parents to wake up, although all the noise, it was a miracle they hadn't already. Zia Donatella turned from the refrigerator with a carton of eggs in her hand. "Hello, my bambini," she said. "I was wondering when you were going to visit me." Alfie and Amelia leaned on the counter. Alfie's forearms were immediately coated in flour. "What are you doing?" he asked as he dusted off the flour. "It's a miracle you have any actual food in here," she said, inspecting her ingredients. "But when you're clever, you can always find something to cook up. So I cook—" "In the middle of the night?" Amelia asked. Zia Donatella stopped for a moment, resting her hand on her hip. "I'm homesick," she said. "Have you ever been homesick?" "It's hard to get homesick when you hardly ever go anywhere," Alfie said. "Our last vacation was 3 summers ago." "Mom and Dad just get busy with work," Amelia said, defending their parents. "But they promise we'll go somewhere next summer." "Or the one after that," Alfie said, nudging his sister and making her smile. "Well, I hope someday you know the feeling," Zia said. It's always good to get away and see the world, but there's nothing like feeling connected to your home and feeling the need to go back, even for a visit." "But you're here now," Amelia said. "Don't you feel better?" "Not this home," Zia said, waving her away. "My home, your parents' home, your Nana's home." "You mean Naples in Italy?" Alfie said. "Esatto," Zia said. "Exactly." She stepped back to the stove, where she heated oil in a deep skillet. "Once I was in the Philippines and we discovered a place called Boracay, with the most beautiful beaches I'd ever seen in my life. Clear water and sand as white as sugar. But suddenly, despite the beauty of the place, I felt this ache in my heart for home. Home to me meant plates of spaghetti, bowls of risotto, and fresh fish straight from the sea. I realized that if I found the right ingredients, I could cook the things I missed. And so I made my new friends the most amazing fish with lemon and spaghetti." Zia tossed a dash of salt into the mixing bowl in front of her, then paused as if thinking fondly of the dish. "The spaghetti may have been a little more Filipino than Italian, but the feeling was still there. I tasted my home in my cooking. When you cook from your heart, you can go anywhere in the world without getting on a plane. Much less expensive," she said, with a wink. She added flour and a few other ingredients to the bowl. "Besides, I couldn't sleep thinking about that wretched pizza you poor children were eating. Pizza! How dare you even call it that?" "Come on, Zia," Alfie said. He had to admit, it was kind of fun to see her get so riled up over pizza. "I thought you'd be happy about us eating food from Italy." "That's not food," she snapped as she added butter to the bowl and turned on the mixer. "And it's certainly not Italian." "Look, Zia," Alfie said over the noise of the mixer. Italian food is in my genes, and presto pesto is good Italian food. Good Italian? Oh my goodness, you kids, Zia said. Amelia giggled, but she also nudged Alfie to tell him to go easy on the teasing. Zia turned off the mixer and removed the attachment. When I was a little girl in Naples, I ate the best pizza every week and didn't even realize it. Nowhere else in the world can make pizza that good. What's so special about it? Amelia asked. Oh, nothing much, Zia said. Just the dough and the sauce and the cheese and the basil, not to mention the way the dough is made, how the tomatoes and basil are grown, and the hands used to stretch the cheese. Hands that make cheese, Alfie said. I'd like to see that. You will, I assure you. They'll show you themselves, Zia said. Who will? Alfie asked. I will show you myself, Zia said. Do you know what else is wonderful about Naples? Amelia, can you please hand me that slotted spoon? Amelia handed her the spoon and asked, What, Zia? Zia took her mixture to the pan of hot oil on the stove, scooped up balls of dough and dropped them into hot oil. The chaos, she said, stepping back from the sizzling pops and crackles of oil. Naples is full of contradictions. Beautiful cathedrals on streets with dark alleys. It's loud, it's fast, it's a little dirty in some places, but the people are wonderful and the food is always fresh. Even the street food, like the zeppoli. She scooped out some of the fried balls and rested them on a plate covered with a paper towel. Is that what these are? Amelia asked, leaning over the plate. See, she said. When I was a little girl, my sister, your Nana, your grandmother, and I would walk the winding streets together, never once getting lost. Any money we had in our pockets we'd always use to buy zeppoli from the street vendor. We'd walk down the park and eat them as we looked out at the water. That's the Gulf of Naples, right? Alfie said, trying to picture Italy on his maps. Perfecto! The Gulf of Naples that flows to the Mediterranean Sea, Zia said. Water like you've never seen. You're going to love it. But for now, the zeppoli. She moved the plate closer to Alfie and Amelia, then brought over another. Sugar and cinnamon? She said, pointing to the second plate. She took a small spice jar from the counter and dipped a teaspoon into it. Now, Alfie, since you so gallantly gave up your room, you must add the magical ingredient nutmeg. Alfie sprinkled the nutmeg over the cinnamon and sugar-filled plate. He glanced at the jar, noticing that it didn't look like the other spice jars they had, but then again, they had never really paid attention. With the nutmeg added, Zia cheered, Perfecto! Now quickly, Bambini, roll them around in the mixture while they're still warm. Alfie and Amelia picked up the warm zeppoli each and rolled it around in the mixture, coating it on all the sides. Aspetta, wait before you taste it, Zia Donatella said. I want you to picture the narrow cobblestone streets, voices rising all around you, walking past stands of fresh fruit and restaurants with tables spilling out into the sidewalks. The sounds and smells always wrapping around you now, she said, leaning in close. Taste the zeppoli and tell me you don't feel the city around you. Alfie and Amelia did as they were told, sinking their teeth into the warm fried dough, crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside. Little crystals of sugar coated Alfie's lips. He closed his eyes as he chewed the light, sweet zeppoli, wondering if his parents were ever going to take him and his sister to Italy. He wanted to know what it felt like to walk on cobblestones, to feel the fresh sea air on his face. There's the zeppoli. And that's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3. I'll add that. And breathe in the smell of pizza made from scratch. Alfie started to take another bite when he felt the air shift slightly around him. Ragazzo, vieni che! A man standing behind a cart was yelling at him. When Alfie looked more closely, he saw that he was selling zeppoli, just like Zia Donatella had made. Looking around, it was clear he was not in his parents' kitchen with his sister and Zia. He was standing on a street so narrow that the sun couldn't reach it through the stone buildings. The street and sidewalk were crowded with people, and cars and scooters were zipping by. He said, Come here. You pay double. You and the girl, he said. Alfie turned to see his sister standing beside him, rigid. Her blue eyes were wider and more frightened than he'd ever seen them. Even that time he jumped out of her closet to scare her. Alfie, she said, what's happening? It's okay, he said automatically, even though he had no idea where they were or what happened. Two chatting girls brushed past them. Amelia moved closer to Alfie. The man behind the cart started to approach them. He wore a striped apron and a little paper hat on his head, sat in an irritated angle. Alfie quickly reached into his jean pocket and thankfully found $1. He stepped towards the man and handed it to him. Here, I'm sorry. The man snatched the bill from Alfie's hand, frightening him. Alfie had never been yelled at by an adult before, but since he could feel his sister shaking beside him, he knew he had to be brave. The man looked at the dollar and started yelling. Whole new string of questions. What is this? Where do you think you are? Disney World? I don't want your American money. That's all I have, Alfie said, trying to sound calm. You want me to call the police, or you want to pay up, boy? He shoved the dollar back at Alfie. You have 3 seconds. Alfie, Amelia said, her voice coming in short breaths. What are we going to do? Hey, officer, the man yelled to someone across the street. Alfie, Amelia said, and Alfie knew she was on the verge of crying. We got a thief over here. Alfie reached down and grabbed Amelia's hand and tugged it and said, Run! Alfie and Amelia took off down the tight, winding streets, splashing in puddles and bumping into people, who turned to yell at them. They hid around a corner. Alfie looked back and was just able to see the man had stopped chasing them. Relieved, Alfie led his sister to where the streets widened and the sun shone down on them. They slowed to a walk and Alfie let go of Amelia's hand. What is going on? Amelia said. Where are we? What is this place? Why was that guy yelling at us? I don't know, Alfie said, trying to catch his breath. He had to think rationally. I must be dreaming. I'm having a dream and you're in it. I'm not in your dream, Amelia said. You're in my dream. Get out of my dream. She reached over and pinched him several times before he could yank his arm away. Amelia, stop it, Alfie said. We can't both be dreaming the same dream at the same time. He looked down at his left hand, which still clutched the Zapoli. Sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg stuck to his palm. The Zapoli. Amelia looked at the Zapoli in her own hand. She screamed and threw it across the street, hitting a woman wearing a red and white striped skirt. The woman yelled something back to Amelia, and she didn't understand it. Amelia stepped closer to her brother once again. The guy must think we stole them. Nice move, Alfie said, gently teasing her. Be quiet, she said. She crossed her arms and looked around. Well, you like to pretend you're grown up and in charge, so here's your chance. What are we going to do? Alfie surveyed his surroundings. Maybe there's something down this street here. If we keep walking around, we'll get lost. We're already lost, Alfie reminded her. We have no idea where we are, or even how we got here. Amelia looked back the way they had come. Maybe being by the cart means something. Should we go back? I'm pretty sure we shouldn't go anywhere near that cart ever again, Alfie said. Just let me think for a minute. He had to make sure he didn't panic because, after all, this probably was some sort of weird dream, which meant it wasn't even real. But dream or no dream, he had to take care of his own sister, even though she was starting to look less frightened and more annoyed. Alfie looked around. He spotted the word Napoli on a shop window and on a stack of newspapers. Tiny cars rushing by them, half the size of the cars they were used to seeing. People on scooters buzzed by without regard for others crossing the street. Streets that were cobblestoned, with rivers of water running between the stones. He looked up to the corner to find the street names, and they were on the corner of Via Salvatore Rosa and Via Pontecorvo. On the wall of a brick building, faded white letters read Pasta Fabbrica. He made a note of this, marking at the point of reference of where this whole thing started. Up ahead his restaurant was a restaurant called Trattoria Floriano, with tables set up outside. Alfie was pretty sure that all of these words were Italian. Didn't the guy selling Zapoli say something about being in Disney World? He asked his sister. Maybe we're in Epcot, in the Italian section. Yeah, sure, Amelia said, because that makes sense. I keep seeing the word Napoli. That's Naples in Italian, right? Yeah, So, Amelia said, what does it mean? Maybe we're in Naples, Italy, he said. Alfie, Amelia began. That doesn't make any sense. Alfie sighed. She was right. Let's go to the cafe and figure out what to do. If we stand here much longer, we'll get run over. Do you have any money on you? Guess I forgot to grab my wallet before we left, she said sarcastically. We're not really in Italy, he said to himself. But where were they? They'd go to the cafe, order a Coke, and try and figure all out what to do. Come on, I'll take care of this. Alfie walked behind Amelia as they headed towards Trattoria Floriano. With the streets so crowded and chaotic, the last thing he wanted to do was lose sight of her. To their right, rising higher than all the buildings, he saw a white peaked mountain. The top touched the clouds. That's pretty cool looking, right? He asked his sister, hoping to distract her. You know what's in Naples, Italy? Amelia said. Mount Vesuvius. Okay, Alfie said. You know the volcano that destroyed the entire city of Pompeii? The volcano that hasn't erupted in so many years that's due for another blow? Alfie looked up at the mountain. It was bold and intimidating. I'm sure it'll be fine, he said. I mean, what are the odds? All right, next time I'll be reading chapter 4 and 5. Hope you're enjoying the story so far.